The wind howled like a hungry wolf, whipping dust devils across the parched land. It was the kind of wind that scraped the paint off houses and left a gritty film on everything it touched. Out in the heart of Oklahoma, during the worst of the Dust Bowl, survival was a daily battle. Families clung to their farms, their hopes dwindling with each passing season of drought. Fields that once yielded bountiful harvests were now cracked and barren, monuments to broken dreams. Small homesteads dotted the landscape, each one a testament to the enduring spirit of the people who refused to give up. Fences sagged, starved of wood and care, mirroring the weary shoulders of the men and women who toiled from dawn till dusk. Children, their faces etched with worry beyond their years, learned early the value of every drop of water and every scrap of food. In the distance, heat shimmered above the desolate plains, creating mirages that teased the eye with false promises of relief. The sun beat down mercilessly, baking the earth and sucking the moisture from anything that dared to grow. It was a harsh land, unforgiving and relentless. But even in this desolate place, life stubbornly persisted. People helped each other, sharing what little they had. A sense of community, forged in hardship, bound them together. They knew that only by working together could they weather the storm, both literally and figuratively. This was a story about to be told, a story about finding love in the most unexpected places. One afternoon, as the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a lone figure appeared on the horizon. He was walking, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion, pushing a rickety wagon that looked as worn and weary as he did. The man, Caleb, was gaunt, his face weathered and lined, his eyes holding a deep well of desperation. His clothes were patched and faded, covered in a thick layer of dust. He approached Sarah's farm, the only one for miles that still showed signs of life. Her small house stood defiant against the backdrop of despair, a testament to her resilience. Sarah, a woman in her late 20s, stood on her porch, watching him approach. She had seen many like him pass by, their faces etched with the same plea. Caleb stopped at the edge of her property, his voice hoarse as he called out, "Ma'am? Please, ma'am, I need help." He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the wagon. "It's for my baby. She's not doing well." Sarah watched him, her heart aching at his obvious distress. She knew what it was like to struggle, to feel the weight of the world on your shoulders. Her husband had died just last year, leaving her to tend the farm alone. It had been a hard year, filled with loss and loneliness. Caleb shuffled closer, his voice barely a whisper. "I need milk, ma'am. Just a little. She hasn't eaten in days. I don't have anything to offer, but I'll work for it. Anything." He looked up at her, his eyes pleading. "Please, ma'am. My baby needs your help." Sarah hesitated, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. She had little to spare herself, her own milk cow barely producing enough to meet her needs, giving away what little she had felt like a betrayal of her own survival. But the desperation in Caleb's eyes, the sheer vulnerability of his plea, tugged at her heartstrings. She remembered the ache of emptiness after her husband's death, the feeling of being utterly alone in the world. Could she turn away someone in such obvious need? She looked at Caleb's wagon, a makeshift affair cobbled together from scraps of wood and old wheels. A tattered blanket covered something within. Sarah steeled herself, pushing aside her own fears and insecurities. "Wait here," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "I'll see what I can do." She turned and went into her house, the cool darkness a welcome relief from the harsh sun. Inside, she went to the small pantry, her eyes scanning the meager supplies. A half-empty jar of preserves, some dried beans, and a small bag of flour. Not much to offer a hungry man. She grabbed a clean pail and headed out to the barn. The cow, Bess, was old and sway-backed, but her eyes were gentle and knowing. Sarah spoke softly to her as she milked, her hands moving with practiced ease. The milk was thin and watery, but it was better than nothing. When the pail was half full, she carried it back to Caleb, her heart heavy with a mixture of hope and trepidation. "Here," she said, holding out the pail. It's not much, but it's all I can spare. Caleb's face lit up with gratitude, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Thank you, ma'am, he whispered. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. He reached for the pail, his hands trembling. Caleb rushed to the wagon, his hands shaking as he carefully lifted the tattered blanket. Beneath it lay a tiny infant, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes closed. She was wrapped in a thin, worn cloth, her small body barely visible. Caleb gently scooped her up, holding her close to his chest. Ruth, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Daddy's got milk for you now, baby girl. You're going to be all right. He fumbled with a small, chipped cup, pouring in some of the milk. He brought it to Ruth's lips, but she didn't respond. He tried again, coaxing her gently, but she remained unresponsive. Sarah watched, her heart sinking. The baby was too weak to drink. Caleb's hands trembled as he tried to feed her, spilling more milk than he managed to get into her mouth. Frustration and despair etched themselves onto his face. He looked utterly defeated. She won't take it, he said, his voice breaking. I don't know what to do. I've tried everything. He looked at Sarah, his eyes pleading for help. I'm not good at this. I don't know how to care for her. Sarah stepped forward, her instincts taking over. Let me try, she said, her voice gentle but firm. She reached out her arms. Caleb hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly handed her the baby. Ruth felt feather-light in her arms, her skin cool and fragile. Sarah cradled her close, feeling a surge of protectiveness she hadn't felt in years. This little one needed her. Sarah gently adjusted Ruth in her arms, positioning the baby against her chest. Almost instinctively, she brought Ruth's face to her breast. To Sarah's surprise and Caleb's astonishment, Ruth turned her head and latched on. She suckled weakly at first, but then with increasing determination. Sarah felt a strange sensation, a tingling warmth that spread through her body. She wasn't lactating, not yet, but Ruth's presence, her touch, seemed to awaken something deep within her. It was as if the baby's need had somehow triggered a dormant maternal instinct. Caleb watched in stunned silence, his eyes wide with disbelief. He had tried everything he could think of, but nothing had worked. And now, this woman, a stranger, was able to soothe his baby, to give her the nourishment she so desperately needed. I don't understand, he stammered. How is she? Sarah simply smiled, her eyes filled with a newfound tenderness. She's hungry, she said softly. And sometimes, all a baby needs is a little comfort and a mother's touch. She continued to hold Ruth close, allowing her to suckle, even though no milk was flowing. It was more than just nourishment. It was a connection, a bond forming between them. After a few minutes, Ruth pulled away, her breathing more regular, her tiny face less pale. She looked up at Sarah with wide, trusting eyes. Sarah gently stroked her cheek, feeling an overwhelming sense of love and compassion. In that moment, she knew that her life had changed forever. This little baby needed her, and she in turn needed this baby. A profound silence settled between them, broken only by the soft chirping of crickets in the nearby fields. The setting sun cast long shadows across the yard, painting the scene in warm, golden hues. Caleb, still stunned by what he had witnessed, found himself unable to look away from Sarah and Ruth. There was a peace in that moment, a sense of rightness that he hadn't felt since his wife, Martha, had passed. Sarah continued to cradle Ruth, her fingers gently stroking the baby's soft hair. She felt a wellspring of emotion rising within her, a deep and powerful love that she had thought lost forever. It was as if Ruth had somehow unlocked a part of her heart that had been frozen in grief. Thank you, Caleb finally managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know what I would have done without you. He hesitated, then added, I don't know how to repay you. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes filled with compassion. You don't have to repay me, she said softly. Just seeing Ruth doing better is payment enough. She paused, then added, but maybe you could tell me what happened. How did you end up out here, all alone? Caleb sighed, his shoulders slumping with weariness. He knew he owed her an explanation. He had been wandering for days, searching for help, his hope dwindling with each passing mile. He began to tell his story, his voice low and filled with sorrow. It was a story of loss, of hardship, and of a father's desperate love for his child. "Martha," Caleb began, his voice cracking with grief. "She was the strongest woman I knew, a hard worker, a loving wife, and the best mother a child could ask for, even before Ruth was born." He paused, swallowing hard. But the birthing, it was too much for her. The doctor said she was weak, that the drought had taken its toll. She didn't make it. He looked down at his hands, his knuckles white as he clenched them tight. "I tried to care for Ruth myself, but I'm a farmer, not a nursemaid. I didn't know what to do. The milk dried up, and I didn't have the money to buy more. I tried to make gruel, but she wouldn't take it. I was losing her, and I didn't know how to stop it." He looked up at Sarah, his eyes filled with despair. "I promised Martha I would protect her, that I would give her the best life I could. But I failed her. I failed them both." Sarah listened intently, her heart aching for Caleb and for the baby in her arms. She understood the pain of loss, the feeling of helplessness in the face of tragedy. She reached out and gently touched Caleb's arm, offering him a silent gesture of comfort. "You didn't fail them, Caleb," she said softly. "You did everything you could, and you brought Ruth here to me. That's not the act of a failure. That's the act of a loving father." She looked down at Ruth, her eyes filled with tenderness. "And I promise you, I'll do everything in my power to help her. I'll be the mother she needs for as long as she needs me." The night deepened, the stars glittering like diamonds scattered across a velvet cloth. Sarah invited Caleb to stay in the barn for the night, offering him a place to rest after his long journey. He gratefully accepted, his exhaustion evident in every move. Inside the house, Sarah laid Ruth down in a makeshift cradle she had fashioned from an old wooden box. She watched the baby sleep, her small chest rising and falling gently. A wave of tenderness washed over her, a feeling she hadn't experienced since her husband, Thomas, had been alive. She missed him terribly, but in that moment, she felt a glimmer of hope, a sense of purpose she had thought lost forever. She knew she couldn't simply send Caleb and Ruth on their way. The baby was too weak, and Caleb was clearly overwhelmed. She had to do something, anything, to help them. After much deliberation, she went out to the barn, her lantern casting a warm glow in the darkness. Caleb was asleep, curled up on a pile of hay, his face etched with worry even in sleep. Sarah gently shook him awake. He startled, his eyes widening in alarm. "What is it? Is Ruth all right?" "She's fine," Sarah reassured him. "I just wanted to talk to you." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I have an idea, a proposition, if you will." She took a deep breath and continued. "I know you're struggling, and I know you want what's best for Ruth. So, I propose a temporary arrangement. You stay here on my farm. I'll care for Ruth, feed her, and nurse her back to health. You can help me with the chores, work the fields, whatever needs doing. It'll be a fair exchange. And when you're back on your feet, when you have a place to go and can care for Ruth properly, then you can take her with you." She looked at him, her eyes pleading for him to understand. "What do you say, Caleb? Will you let me help you?" Caleb stared at Sarah, his eyes wide with disbelief. He had expected nothing, had dared to hope for nothing more than a single pail of milk. And now, this woman was offering him a lifeline, a chance to rebuild his life and care for his daughter. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to be a burden. I can work hard, but—" "I'm sure," Sarah said, her voice firm. "I wouldn't have offered if I wasn't. And you won't be a burden. I need the help, and Ruth needs the care. It's a good arrangement for both of us." Caleb nodded slowly, tears welling up in his eyes. Then yes. "Thank you, Sarah. Thank you more than words can say." The following days fell into a rhythm. Caleb worked tirelessly, repairing fences, tending to the fields, and helping with the endless chores that came with running a farm. He was grateful for the work, for the chance to contribute and earn his keep. Sarah, meanwhile, devoted herself to caring for Ruth. She fed her small amounts of milk throughout the day, carefully monitoring her progress. She bathed her gently, cooing softly as she washed away the dirt and grime. She sang her lullabies at night, her voice filled with a tenderness she hadn't known she possessed. The local women, hearing of Sarah's new charge, came to offer their help and advice. They shared tips on feeding, bathing, and soothing a baby. They brought over hand-me-down clothes and blankets, their generosity a testament to the strong sense of community that bound them together. Sarah soaked up their knowledge, learning quickly and adapting to the demands of motherhood. It wasn't easy, but it was rewarding. With each passing day, Ruth grew stronger, her eyes brighter, her smile more frequent. And with each passing day, Sarah's heart grew fuller, her love for Ruth deepening. One morning, as Sarah was nursing Ruth, she felt a strange sensation. A warmth, a tingling, a fullness in her breasts. She looked down at Ruth, who was suckling contentedly, and realized with a start that her milk had come in. A miracle, she thought, a true miracle. Tears streamed down her face as she held Ruth close, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. She was a mother now, truly a mother, and she had milk to nourish her child. It was as if Ruth's presence had somehow awakened her body, fulfilling a need she hadn't even realized she had. Caleb, hearing her cries, rushed into the house, his face etched with concern. "What's wrong? Is Ruth all right?" Sarah looked up at him, her eyes shining with joy. "She's fine," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "We're both fine. My milk came in, Caleb. I can feed her properly now." Caleb's face broke into a wide grin, his eyes filled with tears of relief. That's wonderful, Sarah," he said, his voice trembling. "That's the best news I've heard in a long time." From that day forward, Sarah's bond with Ruth deepened even further. She nursed her regularly, watching with pride as the baby grew stronger and healthier. Ruth thrived under her care, her laughter filling the house with joy. Sarah felt a sense of completeness she had never known before. She was a mother, and Ruth was her child. The dust bowl outside seemed less daunting, the hardships less unbearable. Love, it turned out, could bloom even in the most barren of landscapes. And a family built on compassion and necessity could be the strongest of all. As the weeks turned into months, a comfortable rhythm settled over Sarah's farm. Caleb continued to work diligently, his strong hands bringing life back to the parched land. He helped Sarah with the planting, the weeding, and the harvesting, his presence easing her burden and allowing her to focus on Ruth. He visited Ruth every day, watching her grow and thrive under Sarah's care. He would hold her, sing to her, and tell her stories about her mother, Martha. He was careful not to intrude on Sarah's role as Ruth's mother, but he made sure that Ruth knew he was her father and that he loved her dearly. A bond began to form between Sarah and Caleb, a connection built on shared responsibility and mutual respect. They talked late into the night, sharing their hopes and dreams, their fears and sorrows. They learned about each other's pasts, their triumphs and tragedies. They found comfort in each other's company, a sense of belonging they had both longed for. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset, Caleb turned to Sarah, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you, Sarah," he said softly. "You saved Ruth's life, and you saved mine. I'll never forget that." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with affection. "You don't have to thank me, Caleb," she said. "We helped each other, and we created something special here, something worth fighting for." She looked at him, her eyes filled with a question. "What do you think the future holds for us, Caleb? For Ruth? For all of us?" Just then, a horse-drawn carriage approached the farm, kicking up dust as it rolled to a stop in front of the house. A well-dressed man stepped out, his gaze immediately drawn to Sarah. It was Jed, a neighboring rancher, known for his wealth and his interest in finding a wife. Jed tipped his hat, his smile charming. "Sarah, my dear, I was just passing by and thought I'd pay you a visit. Heard you had a little one now. Mighty fine thing you're doing, taking care of that baby." Sarah forced a polite smile. "Thank you, Jed. It's good of you to call." She gestured to Caleb, who had stepped forward, his expression wary. "Jed, This is Caleb, Ruth's father. He's been helping me on the farm. Jed's smile faltered slightly, but he quickly recovered. He offered Caleb a curt nod. Pleased to meet you. Sarah, I was wondering if you might be free to join me for supper at the Grandview Hotel next Saturday. They're having a special on prime rib. Sarah hesitated, glancing at Caleb. She knew that Jed was interested in more than just friendship, and she wasn't ready for that. Her focus was on Ruth and on building a life with Caleb, even if she didn't fully understand what that life would look like. Thank you, Jed, she said gently, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to decline. I'm quite busy with Ruth and the farm. Perhaps another time. Jed's smile tightened, but he didn't press the issue. Of course, Sarah. I understand. Well, I'll be on my way then. Good day to you both. He tipped his hat again and climbed back into his carriage, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. As she watched him go, Sarah felt a flicker of unease. She hoped that Jed wouldn't cause any trouble. Her priorities were clear: Ruth, Caleb, and the fragile happiness they had found together. She wouldn't let anyone jeopardize that. The sky turned a sickly yellow-green, the air thick with an unnatural stillness. The birds had stopped singing, and the wind, usually a constant presence, had died down to a whisper. Sarah knew what was coming. A dust storm, a big one. Caleb, she called out, her voice filled with urgency. We need to get to the storm cellar. Now. Caleb, who was working in the fields, looked up at the sky, his face grim. He understood the danger. Dust storms could be deadly, burying everything in their path and suffocating anyone caught in the open. He quickly gathered his tools and hurried towards the house, helping Sarah secure the windows and doors. They gathered blankets, food, and water, preparing for a long night in the cramped confines of the storm cellar. Sarah carried Ruth, wrapping her tightly in a blanket to protect her from the dust. Caleb led the way, his strong arms shielding them from the swirling wind. They hurried across the yard, the dust already beginning to sting their faces. Inside the storm cellar, the air was damp and musty, but it was safe. They closed the heavy wooden door, sealing themselves off from the fury of the storm. The wind howled outside, rattling the door and shaking the walls. Dust seeped in through the cracks, coating everything in a fine layer of grit. Sarah held Ruth close, her heart pounding with fear. Caleb sat beside them, his arm around Sarah's shoulders, offering her comfort and support. They were trapped together, facing the storm, their lives intertwined in a way they had never imagined. The storm raged outside, a terrifying reminder of the power of nature and the fragility of life. But inside the storm cellar, they found solace in each other's presence, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. They were a family now, a family forged in hardship and bound by love. And they would weather the storm together, no matter what the future held. Hours crawled by, marked only by the relentless roar of the wind and the occasional tremor of the earth. Inside the storm cellar, the air grew stale, and the silence between them became heavy with unspoken emotions. Sarah watched Caleb, his face illuminated by the flickering light of a small candle. She saw the worry etched in his brow, the determination in his jaw. He was a good man, a strong man, and she had come to rely on him more than she ever thought possible. She looked down at Ruth, sleeping peacefully in her arms, oblivious to the danger that surrounded them. She felt an overwhelming sense of protectiveness, a fierce determination to keep her safe, no matter what the cost. She would do anything for this child, anything to ensure her happiness. Caleb shifted, his gaze meeting Sarah's. He saw the love in her eyes, the unwavering devotion to Ruth. He knew that Sarah was more than just a caregiver. She was Ruth's mother, in every sense of the word. And he realized, with a jolt of clarity, that he was falling in love with her. He reached out and gently took Sarah's hand, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. He didn't say anything, but his eyes spoke volumes. They were trapped in the storm cellar, but they were also trapped in a web of emotions, a tangle of love, gratitude, and longing. Finally, as dawn approached, the wind began to subside, the roar fading to a whisper. The storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape transformed, a world coated in a thick layer of dust. But inside the storm cellar, something else had transformed as well. Their relationship had deepened, their bond strengthened. They had faced the storm together, and they had emerged stronger, more united than ever before. The morning after the storm, the sun rose weakly through the dust-filled air, casting a pale, ethereal light over the ravaged landscape. Sarah and Caleb emerged from the storm cellar, their faces streaked with dirt and exhaustion. Ruth, miraculously, had slept through most of the ordeal, her small face peaceful and serene. They surveyed the damage, their hearts sinking at the sight of their ruined crops and dust-covered home. It would take weeks, maybe months, to recover, but they were alive, and they were together. And that was all that mattered. As Caleb began to clear away the debris, he approached Sarah with a heavy heart. He had been wrestling with a difficult decision, and he knew he couldn't put it off any longer. "Sarah," he said, his voice serious, "I need to talk to you." Sarah looked at him, her expression apprehensive. She sensed that something was wrong. "What is it, Caleb?" He took a deep breath and continued. "I've been offered a job, a good job, working on a ranch far from here. It's a chance to start over, to earn a decent living. But—" he hesitated, his eyes filled with pain. "But I can't take Ruth with me." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She had known that this day might come, but she hadn't allowed herself to dwell on it. The thought of losing Ruth was unbearable. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Caleb looked down at his feet, his shoulders slumped with despair. "I'm not a father, Sarah. I'm a farmer. I can't give Ruth the life she deserves. But you can. You're her mother now, the only mother she's ever known. And I know you'll take care of her, that you'll love her as your own." He looked up at her, his eyes pleading. "I want you to keep her, Sarah. I want you to be her mother, forever." Tears streamed down Sarah's face, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of joy, of relief, of overwhelming love. She had wanted nothing more than to be Ruth's mother, and now Caleb was giving her that gift. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, Caleb, I'll keep her. I'll be her mother. I promise." Caleb's face broke into a wide smile, his eyes filled with gratitude. He reached out and took Sarah's hands in his grip firm and warm. "Thank you, Sarah," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for everything." But Sarah had one condition. "You can't just disappear, Caleb," she said, her voice firm. "You're Ruth's father, and she needs you in her life. You have to promise me that you'll visit, that you'll be a part of her life, even if you're far away." Caleb nodded solemnly. "I promise," he said. "I'll visit as often as I can. I'll write letters, I'll send gifts. I'll do everything I can to be a good father, even from a distance." Just then, a familiar voice called out from the road. "Caleb, Sarah, are you all right?" It was Jed, the neighboring rancher. He had seen the damage from the storm and had come to check on them. He rode up to the farm, his face etched with concern. "I heard you got hit hard by the storm," he said. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Caleb looked at Sarah, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. He had an idea, a way to keep Ruth close, a way to make their new family work. "Actually, Jed," he said, "there is something you can do." "Jed," Caleb said, "I appreciate you coming by. I've been offered a job on a ranch, but it's too far away to bring my daughter. Sarah has agreed to take care of Ruth, but I want to be close by, to be a part of her life." He paused, gathering his courage. "I was wondering, do you have any openings on your ranch? Any kind of work would do. I'm a hard worker, and I'm willing to learn." Jed looked surprised, his gaze shifting from Caleb to Sarah and back again. He saw the love in Sarah's eyes, the unwavering devotion to Ruth. He understood that they had formed a bond, a family, that he couldn't break. He also saw the genuine desire in Caleb's eyes, the yearning to be a good father. A smile spread across Jed's face. "As a matter of fact, Caleb," he said, "I do have an opening. My foreman just left, and I need someone reliable to take his place. It's hard work, long hours, but the pay is good, and you'd have a place to live on the ranch. It's not fancy, but it's close by." Caleb's face lit up with relief. "That would be amazing, Jed," he said. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Jed nodded. his gaze turning to Sarah. "I may have come here wanting something else, Sarah," he said, "but I can see that you've found what you need right here. I'm happy for you, and I'm glad I can help." Sarah smiled, her heart filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Jed," she said. "You're a good man." And so a new family was formed, bound by love, compassion, and the unwavering spirit of the West. Sarah, Caleb, and Ruth, together at last, ready to face whatever the future held. The Dust Bowl may have ravaged their land, but had also brought them together, forging a bond that would last a lifetime. Caleb accepted Jed's offer with heartfelt gratitude, his heart overflowing with relief and joy. He knew that this was the best possible outcome, a chance to provide for his daughter while remaining close enough to watch her grow and thrive. He moved into the small foreman's house on Jed's ranch, a simple but comfortable dwelling just a few miles from Sarah's farm. He visited Ruth every day, spending hours playing with her, reading her stories, and showering her with love. He helped Sarah with the chores on her farm, easing her burden and strengthening their bond. Sarah, Caleb, and Ruth settled into a comfortable routine, their lives intertwined in a tapestry of love and shared responsibility. They were a family, unconventional perhaps, but a family nonetheless. They faced the challenges of the Dust Bowl together, supporting each other through the hardships and celebrating each other's triumphs. They learned to rely on each other, to trust each other, and to love each other unconditionally. Sarah found happiness and fulfillment in motherhood, her heart overflowing with love for Ruth. Caleb found purpose and direction in his work, his devotion to his daughter driving him to be the best father he could be. And Ruth, surrounded by love and care, blossomed into a bright, happy child, her laughter filling their lives with joy. They had found love and family in the most unexpected of places, proving that even in the darkest of times, hope could bloom and miracles could happen. Their story was a testament to the power of compassion, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring strength of love. Years passed, and the Dust Bowl slowly began to recede. The rains returned, and the land gradually began to heal. Sarah's farm flourished once more, yielding bountiful harvests. Caleb thrived in his role as foreman, his hard work and dedication earning him the respect of Jed and the other ranch hands. Ruth grew into a beautiful, intelligent young woman, her laughter echoing through the fields and filling their lives with joy. She was loved by both Sarah and Caleb, each of them playing a vital role in her upbringing. She knew that Sarah was her mother, the woman who had nurtured and cared for her since she was a baby. And she knew that Caleb was her father, the man who had always been there for her, showering her with love and support. They were a family, a patchwork family woven together by fate, compassion, and love. They had faced hardship and loss, but they had also found joy and fulfillment in each other's company. They had proven that family wasn't just about blood. It was about connection, about commitment, and about the unwavering bond that tied them together. One evening, as the sun set over the Oklahoma plains, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Sarah, Caleb, and Ruth sat together on the porch of Sarah's farmhouse. They watched the sunset in comfortable silence, their hearts filled with gratitude for all that they had. Ruth leaned her head against Sarah's shoulder, her eyes filled with love. "I'm so lucky to have you both," she said softly. "I couldn't imagine a better family." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with pride. She looked at Caleb, her eyes filled with love and affection. "We're lucky to have you, Ruth," she said. "You're the best thing that ever happened to us." Caleb reached out and took Sarah's hand in his grip firm and warm. "We're a family, Sarah," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "And we'll always be a family, no matter what." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a final, golden glow across the Oklahoma plains. The sky blazed with color, a vibrant tapestry of orange, pink, and purple. The air was still and quiet, filled only with the gentle chirping of crickets and the distant lowing of cattle. Sarah leaned back in her rocking chair, her heart filled with contentment. She looked at Caleb, his face weathered and lined, but his eyes still filled with love. She looked at Ruth, her beautiful daughter, her laughter echoing through the fields. They had come so far, faced so many challenges, but they had made it through together. The Dust Bowl had tested their strength, their resilience, and their love. It had taken everything from them, but it had also given them something precious, a family, a bond that could never be broken. They had learned that family wasn't about blood. It was about connection, about commitment, and about the unwavering support they offered each other. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Sarah reached out and took Caleb's hand, her grip firm and warm. She looked at him, her eyes